Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. Tonight's episode, Xtreme TV. Tonight, we're reviewing Twin Peaks Season 2, Episode 12. I'm your host, Rob, along with Professor Pixel. As we've been covering the series, Pixel, I have to say that, of course, we think the first season seems to be a masterpiece of television. And the start of Season 2, of course, like everybody who's a fan of Twin Peaks recognizes, is great until they revealed the killer of Laura Palmer. Now, that being said, we have a lot of characters. We have lots of ways that this can go, and I'm open for it to continue because we love the Twin Peaks universe. All that being said, I feel at rock bottom watching this because this episode was not strong. It was particularly weak despite some of the elements in there that, when discussing it, sound good. But this is just where, like I said, people really started getting off the Twin Peaks bandwagon. Hey, you screwed us. This isn't a Twin Peaks. And this is the only episode so far that really kind of almost doesn't feel like it. That's my initial thought. What about you? What do you think of this episode?
Yeah, no, I'll be even generous. I'll give them. No, I can't be generous because then I remember the episode after we reveal Laura's killer is the funeral episode where we meet a very important character for this episode.
And who might that be?
We have to wait to get into that. Those details come in a later scene. But when it comes to where we've come from and where we've gone, we enjoyed the trip the first way around. The second time, it's just gotten rough. Because this doesn't really feel like Twin Peaks. It feels like somebody trying to be Twin Peaks.
Yes.
But it's really a mess. This episode, how it starts off is with Bobby walking into Ben's office, and we know Ben, he hasn't been the same since he was accused of killing Laura Palmer. Yeah, even though you would think that would be a minor step in his way, but it's just destroyed him for some reason. And I don't think they've really pointed out why. His office, whenever Bobby walks in, he has his desk with his couch on it, with a side table up, and it's ridiculous skyscraper that he calls it. But I will say, Ben's performance when talking to Bobby, you do see there's still a little bit of Ben in there, because when Bobby's trying to talk to him, Ben's like, let's just get to the point. He wants Bobby to follow Hank Jennings around, make note of everything he does, no matter what. And Bobby is happy for the opportunity. So he walks out, and that's where we see a screaming woman who was the bride, revealed in the last episode, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, going into this episode, I was like, okay, it's different. I think one of the big issues with this episode is that some of the outdoor scenes, as we'll get to here in a moment, just doesn't feel like Twin Peaks. And I know that most of the interiors are shot in greater Los Angeles area and maybe somewhere in one of the woods areas that they have all this stuff. And I'm okay with all that, but I think a lot of the episodes before, we talked a lot about the editing, whether it's the music and or just some of the transition scenes where they'd give us a split second shot of, cold, wet, overcast area. And here it just looks like it's, sunny LA. It's, 65 degrees and gorgeous outside. So it doesn't feel like it's Twin Peaks. That's a problem I have. Bobby's so beautiful, and he had such a wonderful, I think, striking presence in the first episode, way back in season 1, episode 1. To see him now here kind of with Shelley just sort of maybe treading water, I'm just kind of disappointed in it, because we thought one of the stronger scenes he had in here was with his father, who's Major Briggs, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And so he just seems adrift here. So he's looking for Ben for almost like fatherly advice, which, again, I've mentioned before, Ben just doesn't seem like he's Ben, because it seems like a lot of what we've come to know or would anticipate how a character is going to react has changed over the few episodes here in season 2, and that really upsets me because Ben was a jerk. He was a bad dude, but he did it really well. And Bobby's Bobby, but I'm going, here's a guy that's like taking the camera from Ben walking out of the office, and he's accidentally bumping on it. It looks like he's just a goof, and I'm like, this guy was a star quarterback of his team, and now he just seems like an idiot. And it's not like he's a young man trying to negotiate in the evil world of Twin Peaks, or paying a price, as Ben was trying to allude to with this stupid little sculpture in his office throwing all this crap together. It just doesn't work for me at all. At least Ben's finally, getting something going by having Hank Jennings being followed by Bobby, and that's great. But of course, the lady running down there in her negligee, that's the transition scene there too. But before we kind of transition to that, we do get back where Cooper, who's now wearing plaid because he's off the case. If you're a Miami Vice fan, he's not. He's probably on paid leave from the FBI as he's being investigated. That feels like a slog. Like that's not going anywhere. It felt like it had some meat a few episodes ago, but now it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, you said you wanted to buy property. Well, he's meeting with a realtor about some of the places. And actually, this scene here, I did kind of like. We know that Cooper has this mystical side to him, and we've seen it in a few episodes, particularly the rock tossing episode in season 1. But here, he takes a coin and he flips it because he's like, okay, he's asked which one does he want to see first, and he flips his coin, and it just kind of lands, it falls. We watch it land on a property that his realtor didn't kind of have. She's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was in here. Oh, this is the Dead Dog Farm, which is kind of a cool name. It implies that there's a story behind it or something, which is kind of neat. That's always great. When in doubt, if the character sucks, at least let the town be a character. And I felt like this was almost going to go somewhere, but it quickly devolves into even something worse than the opening scene, because we get Dick, Lucy meeting with this caseworker about the kid that we certainly do not care about at all. And somehow with Lucy playing these two guys off each other, it's just annoying. It's an angle I just despise. The kid makes it even worse because it's a kid we don't care about. It's not funny, hasn't been. And then they try to, it seems like they force this mystical element about the kid because the caseworker mentions that, yeah, he's been around a lot of places because all the people that have, tried to raise him have died. And it's like, ooh, that'll sound like Twin Peaks if we just do something like that to tie all this crap together. And really at this point, if you're a Twin Peaks watcher like we are, I think that's insulting to me too, because it doesn't work. The editing just looks silly. I'm just not liking this at all. Harry says it's an emergency, and it prevents the scene from moving on forward because he and Andy have to go to the Great Northern with some sort of emergency. Yeah. So what's your take?
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said, because it's at this point, while we do have Lucy still trying to pit them against each other, Andy's just sitting there like a dumbass. I was glad when Andy had to go. It was putting the scene out of its misery.
Yeah.
But speaking of misery, though, that's where we go. We go to the lodge where one of the brothers that we were introduced to 3 episodes ago and have had a total of maybe 8 minutes screen time, Dougie, is dead. He was apparently a little too active on his wedding night, and it seems like his heart just gave out. The bride says how she feels cursed, and we see his brother Dwayne distraught and saying that he wants the bride pretty much prosecuted for this. But Hawk is trying to make the bride feel better about herself, trying to talk with her, saying, "You're not cursed. Believe me, I know a thing or two about this area. It's just bad luck." And he leans against the door, and he's trying to look kind of cool, but the door is opened by Andy, and so Hawk falls in, making Hawk look like a dumbass. It was a very Andy thing to do.
Right.
But
it's not a good scene. I mean, I'll disagree with you just slightly here about the whole thing with Dougie because, yeah, it's implied that, of course, his young wife, I think, is it Lucy? No, it's Lana. Lana's his wife, the old lady who was running down the hallway negligee. She's got a spell on men, it appears, because Hawk's acting like an idiot, and we'll talk a little bit more about here in a moment. But I don't care how old Doogie is, 60, 70 years old. He's got a young wife. You're going to perform, bro. You don't need the Kama Sutra and all these classical texts that poetically describe what it's like to have relations with your sweet, sweet significant other. And here's the big problem with this. This guy, the idea of having brothers, one of them being like the mayor and kind of having a feud with his own brother or just some whatever, if they had just kind of let that ferment in the background a little bit, where we actually might have remembered their names or really given a rat's ass about who these guys are or something history-wise about them, then you could do a scene like this if you want it to have any sort of impact. Because the whole thing here is that even though there's a level of absurdity to the show, when we first watch it, because it's dark and it's really dreadful, when they do the comic element in there, it stops being funny. And we can only really poke fun at the people that we know really well about something they like or really pop hard for, like them every fifth episode and somebody having a cup of coffee being poured or whatever. And then here it's like, okay, really old guy, really important to the history of Twin Peaks. We don't know exactly why, because like you said, he didn't have much screen time. And it's like they're so interested in just saying, okay, this young woman killed him and it's going to look like she has control over men or the sexual aspect to it. It's forced. It doesn't work. His brother coming in the rest of this episode off and on it's like, I don't care. This is, it's not that I couldn't care. I'm indifferent to it because they didn't bother trying to get us emotionally invested in the characters, whether because of something they did, some feat that they accomplished, their backstory. Nothing about it at all. This is lazy writing to me. It sucks. It's the scene with Lucy, Andy, the caseworker, and the kid Nick, and all that, who's just annoying, as one of the most punchable faces of all time. That's painful. Because, as you referred to Andy as Deputy Dumbass, I've refrained from it because he hasn't really upset me too much. But now I could care less. And a lot of it has to do with Lucy. But, you have a horrible scene with an indifferent scene. And then you get the goofy, dumb scene next, which is the wrestling coach or whoever. He gives this big speech, kind of a non-PC one, about some coach who recognized the first black guy to play football. And I don't remember his name. Like that's supposed to be funny. No, it's not. As a coach myself, you would know something like it if you were going to bother saying it in front of your people. And he has like the star wrestler district guy, which means he's actually got some talent, which of course happens to be Mike Nelson, who we haven't seen in like 20 episodes because he was with Bobby running drugs early on. So it's like, okay, him and Bobby don't seem to be having any screen time. Are they still running drugs? I don't know, but they kind of brought him back. And now it's so, he can be chased and act like he's going to be putting it in traction or whatever, because he complains about it to Donna after a little wrestling demonstration. Nadine just whips his ass and chucks him everywhere with a fireman's carry that sends him 10 yards. It's 10, 15 minutes of a 45-minute episode it's beyond painful. I mean, it's like, go take a dump and let the TV run. Who cares?
Yeah, it is rough to get through. And in connection to that scene is when, after Mike is done being thrown around by Nadine, he goes out and he's talking to Donna, saying how he needs help, and he used to date Donna. Which,
yeah, they did bring that back up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at least they remembered that fact. But
she's looking kind of cute here, though, too. I thought very professional.
I mean, for the 5 minutes she, minutes even 2 minutes, because she really has nothing going on right now.
Yeah.
And so Mike coming around saying, pretend to be my girlfriend is all she has going for her at
And
this
that is
moment.
so weak.
You
Oh
know
my God,
why?
it's pathetic.
Because of the man in this next scene. And that happens to be James, who is staying with Mrs. Marsh.
The blonde bombshell. The femme fatale.
That's right. And a character comes into his area while he's working, and his name is Malcolm Sloan. He introduces himself and says that he is Evelyn's brother, and he's the driver for her husband, which is some big time Mr. Marsh. We don't know exactly what he does, but we know he likes his new toys. But Malcolm is trying to be, seems friendly enough for a man with problems, but then explains that Evelyn gets beatings every time Mr. Marsh is around, as if trying to hint at James something a little down the line. And that's pretty much where the scene ends. And I don't know. I want to be interested in this, but I'm not.
You know, I think the women in this episode really make it because, even Nadine being put in a really stupid angle was done a complete 180, which is fine. Characters grow, they change, whatever. The whole supernatural strength thing is really stupid, silly, and for a while it was really the only goofy thing until they had Dick from the store, the clothing store or whatever, competing for Lucy's affections. That's asinine. You're right about Dawn not having anything, and of course, it made me immediately kind of remember, well, what the fuck, Donna? Harold, the orchid expert there. I mean, you even though you kind of were investigating, it seemed like you were generally kind of sweet on it because she'd fall for any guy that looked at her more than 2 seconds. But she worked so hard to try to get James to be interested in her. It was almost kind of a desperate thing, which can be a turnoff. But you get one of the kookiest, weirdest sort of characters in Harold who allegedly killed himself, right? And then there's no mention about it. She's not brooding or anything. So I just thought, okay, here's a really good character that was really done well just for a few episodes, that had growth and had a thing to it, added to the history of Twin Peaks and stuff going on, and some weird element when they showed up to Harold's house or neighbor's house and was different people. I'm still kind of freaked out about that, and instead they throw in all this goofy stuff, so you do forget about these things. Because James being in here, I will agree with you. Malcolm, Evelyn's brother, the femme fatale, he has like a professional air about him too. But this, I think, would have worked a lot better if James and her met at the diner like we saw, and all the sexual tension there. They just went to the hotel and just knocked boots that first night, and that's it. And then he's just kind of shacking up with her, boning her, working on the car. He sees her getting beat up. She's got the wedding ring. It would have been kind of neat if they had done this angle a little bit differently, because the whole idea of her getting beaten and this guy Malcolm introducing himself, offering that information, you just smell setup a mile away. And it's a shame that we're spending so much time talking about James, because he's kind of punchable in a way too, but he's still kind of a good guy. He's got needs to have something to do. And I like actually how James's situation is kind of on the outskirts of Twin Peaks, as it were, and away from everybody else. I actually don't mind that, really. I kind of like it. So it's unfortunate for 20 minutes here of the episode, nothing really happens interesting except for Cooper's real estate experiment, which continues in a moment, and James going on here, which actually does bring us to the next scene, which is when Cooper and the realtor lady too, I think her name's Irene. Looks like she's Native American. I don't know if that's intentional or if that has anything, but of course immediately I thought about Hawk, and how Hawk seemed like he had this spiritual thing to him, but that the last thing we remember, of course, with him is looking like a goo falling from the door, which is not hawkish at all. So they pull up to this, older turn of century type home. Not a bad home, but it obviously looks like it's in the hills of, like I say, LA or somewhere up there. And, it just doesn't look like Pacific Northwest 5 miles from Canada. It just doesn't. But anyway, they go there and they're talking about the Dead Dog Ranch, and it's kind of interesting. They have this conversation, and this almost feels Twin Peakish here. It really, really does. She's mentioned how nobody's really looked at the property in a while, but because Cooper's in like detective mode, you can't turn that off. And he says, "Well, I see like 3 tire tracks here." And so they kind of go in, and he goes a little bit slow, and he spends a minute or two looking around. The water's not running. Looks down, he sees some stuff. It's like, yeah, that's baby laxative, which of course that's what you would mix with cocaine. And of course he finds some, and it's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, you know what? The whole episode, the little bit with Cooper has been solid. I'm not gonna say great. I will say up to this point here, though, too, it cuts away to a really quick scene here where Dick's sitting on the side of the road, not want to mush up his fingers with the oil because he's got a flat tire. It looks like on the Beamer that he's got, and of course he's letting Nikki play in a driver's seat with it while he's trying to change the tire. And Nikki, of course, is working him or whatever. And the only cool thing about this scene, it's the only thing I kind of pot for and would have cared about if I should care about these characters, and I don't, is that Dick, being the menswear fashionista that he is, he has that. Forget the style of that denim jacket that has the puffed coating in it around for the neck part and the insides. Really comfortable for really cold weather. He has, and of course it doesn't work at all fashion-wise, but he does have a handkerchief put in the front pocket of it. Nikki's wearing the same kind of jacket, and it's kind of small, and he has the same thing too. And I thought that was kind of funny, but funny only because it's so painful to have to sit through these scenes with Dick and Nikki and all that. But the Cooper scene I did like. How did you feel about that scene?
Again, no, I understand what you're saying about the Cooper scene. Anytime Cooper's on screen, the show does shine a little bit brighter. Maybe if it was just him the entire episode, there could have been a chance, but him and the women. But no, with Dickie and Nikki, as they're called. There's
the Dick Nick crew.
Yeah,
that's their names. We're not. Yeah.
We're not making it up. When Nikki is taking his leak, and the car seems to almost fall on Dick, and then Nikki runs up and wraps his arms around Dick. No, don't die on me. What happens if you die?
It's fake junior college theater crap. It's overacting or underacting to find the middle. You know what I mean? And let me ask you this. Let's say Dick's not ugly. He's not. But he overplays it as I'm going to act like I'm British, and I'm going to really overact, and you're going to see how well I can do this with all this really stuff. It's a stupid character. But if that was a handsome guy, like say that was a young Brad Pitt, and plays a little bit more straight, and let's say Nikki's a nice, as we would say back in the day, a good kid, and all that, where we could actually care about what's going on, and it didn't seem like Lucy was playing these two guys, this would be a whole lot different. Plus, it'd be a lot different if we didn't have the caseworker, like I say, with the lazy writing, basically saying, oh, all the people that Nikki's tried to have foster parents with have died. That's why he's bounced around so many. Wouldn't have been interesting if we saw a few situations like it that seemed like they were accidents, and then he runs into all this, and now we're going, oh, maybe Nikki's now acknowledging to Dick in this scenario that, hey, I don't want you to die, because we think he's being a good kid. He really does love him and care for him. And this actually might make us care about dipshit deputy Andy, Dick, and Lucy in this whole angle. By, treating it with a little bit of respect rather than treating it as a comedy relief thing would have done wonders for this, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. But this episode makes me want to rant, so I will stop.
Well, here's something we do care about, though. And that's worth mentioning, and that is this next scene. There's a character introduced, which we will call the Colonel. He's there to help with the search for Major Briggs. It seems that the owl messages are brought up. Was there an animal in the woods whenever he disappeared? And Coop, of course, brings up the fact, oh, there was an owl. could hear it. I saw it. And that he can't go into details. But the
It's
colonel
classified.
yeah, it's classified. But the colonel goes on to say that Major Briggs is involved in something very, very important, something more than it might seem. And that's pretty much where it leads off. A lot of these scenes are very quick. And going from there, we go right back to James. James, and my notes, whenever the scene started and I saw it was James and Mrs. Marsh there, I jokingly wrote the seduction of James, but not within a moment. He's kissing her. I can't blame James, but it just reminds me what an ass he is. He left Donna days ago and just didn't even come back. But then we see Mrs. Marsh's hubby appear far off, not too far off in the distance from the garage. And he's this big, bald man. We don't know much else, but we see just the side angle of him in the distance and something looming.
Well, it's... You mentioned Cooper talking to, I think it's Colonel Riley, who's Major Briggs' boss, I think, or related to him. You're looking for him. This scene kind of threw me for a loop because I forgot, what a dramatic way to end an episode with Briggs disappearing in a flash of light. And then it forced me, even though I kind of like the scenes of Cooper and the real estate agent talking and then going and checking out the property, I thought were good. It makes me feel a little jarred because I'm going, oh yeah, wait a minute. Cooper's not acting like Major Briggs' disappearance on a flashlight is acting like it's any big deal, because it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Cooper, shouldn't you act a little bit more whatever? Yeah, I thought it was cool that you're interested and felt drawn to Twin Peaks, that you wanted to buy some real estate and now you're looking for it. But it just feels like it's like in the wrong order or something. It just, it feels like they're just forcing things to go along here, because I thought, well, him and, Briggs is giving a good speech or two. He had a great one with Bobby. We've talked about how the judge many episodes ago gave us great Valhalla type speech. We've talked about how some side characters came in and delivered some great performances, and we're really not seeing that here now. Colonel Riley here has a good presence, and this guy's played some heavies and some things in the 80s and everything else there too. So I did recognize someone, oh, it's this guy. And actually, those of you that are fans like me should recognize this guy, because he gives the exact same speech here that you get in Rocky II, because it's Apollo Creed's trainer. There's a scene, I believe it's been a while since I've seen it, so it could be one, but I think it's two. And what it is Apollo Creed from Rocky II, played by Carl Weathers, in a fantastic performance. The trainer comes up to him, and trainer's watching some video, and Apollo Creed, the champion, didn't lose the fight. Rocky just wanted to go the distance, and Rocky's one of the best movies of all time with Sylvester Stallone from the 76, I believe. And everyone's like banging on the champ, Apollo Creed, and Apollo's like, he's a professional, he's a smart dude, he's not a hype guy or any of these kind of athletes that are out today. And so he's trying to goad Rocky into a rematch. And that's really the whole setup for it. But Rocky doesn't want to do it because his wife's pregnant. But then Rocky feels forced into doing it because he's illiterate, can't do anything. And as he says to, Adrian, hey, I never asked you to stop being a woman. Don't ever ask me to stop being a man, because she doesn't want to fight. And then he feels guilty. Then she gets the win speech to him. And you're like pumped up. But an understated scene in there is when the trainer comes up after all this emotional stuff, and he almost kind of quietly whispers and leans over the desk and says, "We don't need this. This man took a beating like no man I've ever seen before. I know what you're thinking, champ. I've been there. Let it go." And it's like so freaking awesome the way he delivers it, because he's such a great side character to that. That's exactly what I thought of walking into this scene here, because Colonel Riley, who's played by this character, African-American individual, leans over, does the same thing. He's like, this is much bigger than you need to know. And it goes back to the scene that seemed kind of goofy where there was some of those signals that had Cooper's, name in it and all that stuff that kind of freaked us out. And it said, yeah, there's definitely something supernatural and outer spacey going on with all this here too. Yeah, we know something's going on. Briggs is tied to it. But again, this character coming in, it's not a bad thing. The guy does a good job doing it, but because some of these scenes seem like they're out of order or not right, or Cooper's not reacting emotionally to it, it doesn't, I think, allow a viewer that's been invested into it up to this time to really feel emotional about it. And I have to agree with what you said here at the beginning. These scenes are so quick, because the scene you just mentioned with James working on the Jag and with Evelyn, okay, we know those two are going to get together, but James, even though I know he's supposed to be emotionally upset and hurt, despondent, whatever you call it, he's a 17, 18, 19-year-old, good-looking, healthy male, which means his testosterone is off the charts, and he want to be shagging anything that just shakes their butt at him. So again, with them giving this nice little kiss in the car, okay, I get it, it's TV or whatever, but if she's the femme fatale, let her be the femme fatale. Let that camera, let us see James, who's acted disinterested in the best-looking woman cheerleader, Laura Palmer, who died, Audrey, who's no slouch herself. Let us see how he can ignore two gorgeous women and lose it for this older lady and see what happens. Because that's what they're really doing. It's that old school 30s, 40s femme fatale, blonde sort of thing from the days in classic Hollywood. I get it. It's not a bad angle. It's almost mildly interesting. It's just done bad, because at the next scene, we get Audrey and Bobby, and Bob, of course, Audrey's flirting with him heavily. She's teasing Bobby about this new job or whatever. They do some flirty talk about doing business together. She's touching him, bumping into him, all this stuff, and he's stroking her face and all that. I'm like, Bobby, you were banging the hottest girl in town, the cheerleader. Now you've got, really, to me, one of the most beautiful women on the show, and that's, of course, Shelley Johnson or whatever. And I understand you don't want to be in that situation. You want the cake, you want to eat the cake, but you don't want to have the responsibility that comes along with it. I get it. So Audrey might seem like it, but it seems like Audrey doesn't even care about how strongly she was emotionally invested in Cooper. Audrey does not seem like Audrey. We're not getting smooth Audrey. We're not seeing the Audrey that we know that like playing detective. We're not seeing the girls tag up and do anything. We see Ben in the office doing some stupid Battle of Gettysburg talking stuff with Bobby, and Bobby's got some photos or whatever. And it's like, yeah, it's just, who are these characters? I don't get it.
Well, I will say that this is actually very important for a scene that comes up in just a moment. Because while Ben is getting the pictures from Bobby, Audrey does her usual, I'll go in between the wall and I'll open this panel, and she gets to look and listen in. From there, we get a quick scene that, if you want to talk about characters not exactly being themselves, I think Pete comes up right here, because they're popping champagne, Pete and Catherine. And Pete is trying to give a little toast. And then our attention is brought to Josie the maid. Pete seems to be going
maid outfit. Yeah.
Yeah, he makes a mention like, you shouldn't be too rough on the old girl. She is still family. And then Catherine's saying that she killed my brother, which we know is false now. But I can't see good guy Pete being like, oh, okay, Josie's our maid now. It works. No. But it does get us through. Is there anything you wanted to say about Pete?
I do. Okay. What are they toasting to? They're not. They don't even mention, hey, let's raise our glass to blah, 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 blah here. It would have been a quick, easy way to show that they're acknowledging what is their progressing on? Is it Catherine's master plan that seems to have changed and maybe now includes Pete because she couldn't stand him? I told you how I really hated the scene in here with Pete laughing at Ben when Ben was in jail, when Catherine did the Toji Mura thing on Ben. And it's like, Pete does not seem like the Pete we knew that grew up, kind of crushing a little bit on Josie in his own way and be happy with fishing and ignoring his wife that he loves a lot dearly, who despises him, and he knows it. I don't get Pete at all right now. It's very disappointing to see that, because I'm watching a scene going, okay, Pete runs his mouth, talking some, was it Keats or Yates? I don't remember who. And the scene's just there for us to see Josie in a little sexy outfit. Maybe if we'd have saw another scene in here of Josie, playing all despondent, and then starting to slowly amp up the flirty stuff with Pete, or we see Pete spying on on Josie, like bending over or cleaning, something like that. And we see Pete's lustful, desires. Maybe we'd have an angle here, but we don't. You're right. It's a real quick scene that means nothing.
Yeah, but it goes into the next important scene where Dale is talking to Diane, making a note. It's talking about how Earl is toying with Dale. That angle is really going nowhere too. In all honesty, Dale and Wyndham Earl, oh yes, we're setting this up. It's not. It feels empty. But Dale's talking about how he hopes to settle down one day. But even in this small town, there are secrets. And that's when Audrey pops by. So earlier when she was flirting a little bit with Bobby, but not letting him go in for the kiss.
Correct. She knows what she's doing.
She comes here, brings the pictures of Hank meeting, what's their names? Ernie and Jean Renault. Yes. So she was still playing her angle. It wasn't executed properly. I can agree with that. But that's exactly why she was there. She brings that to Cooper. Another great thing about this scene is when Denise comes in, Audrey is a little surprised by Denise. And whenever Denise comes in, Audrey's like, oh, okay, well, I'll go ahead and go. And she quickly kisses Dale and runs out of the room. Denise quickly talks with Cooper.
Denise Duchovny. For those that don't know, this is David Duchovny right before he got on the X-Files.
That's right. He is going over the information, says, this is all good, Coop. We can absolutely use this. But the most important thing that we need to talk about right now is, how old is that girl? And Dale jokes that I wouldn't think you'd be interested that much in girls, Denise.
Duchovny steals the scene here because he's dressed in the professional woman's business suit, minus a bra, I believe, but obviously he's got the really bad wig on. It's really long hair and the complete makeup and stuff too. And she, of course, you're right, Audrey does kiss him on the lips, and there definitely seems some chemistry between them. But to me, we like Cooper so much out of all the characters because we see the world through his eyes, because he's investigating what's going on. And while our focus may drift because of all the characters and stuff, the show's obviously, to me, built around him, I feel. And so when we feel that strongly about a character, we want to see them, suffer and grow from it, but then earn things. And part of that is, happiness with a relationship. And there was a nice little scene he had a few episodes ago explaining to Audrey when he let's just be friends to her, about, well, the reason why I don't get involved is because I did once, and she was married, and I ended up getting shot, and my boss, Wyndham Earl, got committed or whatever it was. I think it was related, if I recall correctly. But the point is his backstory is related on him making a bad decision. So it's understandable, but you really felt that there was this heaviness between them because they had a genuine affection for each other. And it doesn't mean long-term they're going to get married and have kids or whatever, but you just don't know the shelf life of a relationship. And it's not like he's using her. It's not like he just is making her do stuff. She wants to be involved. She's a I don't know if I want to say she's smart, but she's precocious. She's bored, so she wants to get involved in stuff. And she could very easily take the attitude of, oh, you snubbed me? F you, buddy. But no, she goes on and still wants to be involved in doing something, and I still say, of course, because I think she's interested in them, whether or not they go there with this angle, it certainly doesn't appear to it. But you're right, it's just female jealousy, even though Denise Duchovny is just a cross-dresser, not somebody who's transitioning, or I wouldn't even say experimenting, or whatever term you might want to use. I just think Duchovny's not being boisterous with this role and just explaining it very kind of half-heartedly and having a good friendship was a nice way of demonstrating this. Some people might feel uncomfortable with it, especially when Denise goes to leave with the papers because he's trying to see with Cooper's setup, why he's being suspended, if there's a relationship here. And he kind of like puts his hand on Cooper's face. Cooper doesn't shy away, but it's not like it's affectionate. It's not romantic or sexual. And just little things like that, even though it's probably supposed to have been at that time a goof sort of character or arc, it still works, and it gives Audrey something to do. And immediately I'm almost going, oh, wow, yeah, put Audrey and Coop together a little bit more, even if it's inadvertently like this. And all of a sudden we almost have an episode, because the next scene I actually thought was a bit heartfelt too, and it seemed a little bit more towards the roots of what we've come to know. And that's when we talk about Big Ed and Norma kind of explain, or Big Ed's telling Norma, hey, I kind of feel like my life's kind of, he's not doing the woe is me thing. He's just simply acknowledging that, yeah, sometimes life happens and you have all these plans when you're young, because they were the item when they were younger. I forget exactly what the details were, but he ended up with Nadine, and it turned to be a shotgun kind of wedding sort of thing. So Big Ed's kind of old school loyal, and he does care about Norma and love, or about not Norma, yeah. And but then you can't turn that stuff off. And again, it's only been 2 to 3 weeks since the first episode, even though there was the one episode with a couple days delay. It's not been a month. And in less than that time, Big Ed, Norma basically kind of had the conversation of, well, we got to kind of stop right now, and Hank had been back in town too. And so Norma was kind of watching and seeing how Hank was being. And it looks like Hank obviously isn't doing well, despite the few times he's tried to sweet talk Norma. But Big Ed and Nadine, there's something there. But Big Ed is sincere in this, and it comes across as, again, being heartfelt. And this is a tough scene to do. And Norma just kind of touches hands or whatever. And we see, this is the only good scene, I think, visually speaking, in this episode, where we see that happening and the camera kind of pulls away and you don't see Hank, but you see his domino dice there. Number 7, I think, is what we see, but I thought it was number 6, but maybe it's the flip side or whatever. And you see him kind of going around the corner and like stopping, seeing it, then walking off, and you just really see the dice. Oh, that was a nice shot. That brings me to a real quick scene where, Dick goes back to the station house and he tells Andy that he thinks Nikki's the devil, and we don't know why, but it's just because maybe he almost died. It's really dumb and stupid. So I'll pause right here before we get to basically towards the end of the episode and say that 3 things really disappoint me about this episode. And I'm not even going to talk about the choices in writing that I don't approve of, don't like as a fan. I agree with you. These scenes are really cut and edited really quick, where they're bouncing from here to here. We've talked about how that's happened before in some episodes because there's a few different directors, and I understand it. We're not going to like all of them. I think this episode, by and large, has failed to really feel like Twin Peaks because of it. But another thing that I also don't like here is that whatever music that we've become accustomed to maybe hearing in key scenes, whether it's Laura's theme or 1 or 2 others, we don't really seem to get a lot of it. And also the third thing is this just feels like it's so poorly chopped together, put together for those 2 reasons, that we're not getting some of the transition scenes and other things that make us feel like we're into it. It feels rushed, haphazard. It doesn't feel, like you're settling into the episode. It's just, okay, we're going to go here. Oh, by the way, this is going on. But, oh, back here, this is happening. And now, ha, ha, ha. And oh, here. Oh, wait, let's try to be serious. It's just not working for it, because we do get into one of the last couple scenes in here, which are hit and miss for me also. But, do you want to take the next scene here with, Harry meeting with, the dead brother's brother?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go over that. But first, I have to go back to talk about that scene
Okay.
with Dick and Andy. When Dick's walking in, Lucy's prepared for Dick to make some kind of move, and Dick just passes looking for Andy. And that was, I will admit, that was a little humorous. But the worst offense of this entire episode is when Dick is saying that Nikki might have killed his parents. We need to figure this out. I think Nikki might be the devil. It's when right behind Dick's head, a little bubble appears and it shows Nikki in a devil costume with flames around him. It's
Really?
You didn't notice that?
I'm pulling up the scene right now as we talk. So this is yeah, Lucy's this in the end, and he says it. He may in fact be the devil. And Andy's like, the devil, or at the very least, homicidal in the first degree. Andy, we've got to find out what happened to his parents. Yes.
You see it?
Yes. That's awful. Oh, that is so bad. And it's in Andy's head. You're right. He looks away, and
it's so ridiculous.
I missed that. I just don't know how I missed it. I must not. Oh my God.
I would have wanted to miss it. That would have made this episode 15 times better.
That's awful. That is so bad.
I haven't been able to stop thinking about that one thing and that comical evil laugh that they had. It's just
But that's my whole point is we talk about this in sales all the time that it takes it takes $1,000 to gain a new customer, but it takes 10 cents for them to not be a customer anymore. The idea is basically you have to invest a lot. Loyalty, purpose, part of that's being consistent with your product, people knowing what they're getting, dealing with any issues that come up. And I look at it as an episode of TV as product, because when I basically still trying to give this episode as pass, because to me this is the worst episode. I'm just going to go out and say it now. And now that I'm being reminded of the scene, even though I was trying to spout some positive things about the episode and almost defend it to myself, that's offensive to me. That's insulting, because it's not funny.
And they wanted to be. They really wanted to be. But thankfully it only lasts a second, and we quickly go to Dwayne. He's going on about how he wants to press charges, and they're telling him he can't because she didn't kill him. She slept with him. She didn't kill him. And Dwayne's not happy about that. And whenever they're all, after Dwayne's gone, they all walk out of the office, and it's three guys. It's Harry, Andy, and Dick. Oh, and Hawk. My apologies. And they see the widow, and she is dressed in black, and she's leaning against the doorway, and Dick starts, it sounds like reciting a poem. I don't know exactly what it's supposed to be, but eventually the guys start joining in. I don't understand what's happening. But then we get it's a really bad cut, because we just saw Lucy a second ago. Yeah. So this is to imply some time has happened, I guess. Lucy's walking around and looking, and she gets a call. It's for Truman, so she tries to connect it to his office. Then she calls over the intercom, and nothing. So she hears some laughter coming from Truman's office, opens it up, and all the men are laughing at the widow's story, which is exactly what you were talking about earlier, that she has this effect on women. This came out of nowhere. It is really ridiculous. I know you were saying it about earlier in this episode with Hawk looking like a dumbass. I never got that implication. This is just ridiculous.
Hawk saved Cooper and Truman because he followed them. And so we're like, hell yeah, he earned his stripes there, because he's even Deputy Dumbass Andy, gets a little bit more screen time than Hawk, but Hawk does enough where we go, hey, he's competent. He's a really good part of this group. He knows about the spiritual side of Twin Peaks, and he's there for the mystical side or whatever, being Native American, and people can say, oh, that's racist, that's whatever. No, it fits and it goes with it. And like he said, well, hey, a lot of my friends are white, or whatever the line he had, he handled it well when that was brought up. So I thought that was kind of progressive for the time, for to handle it with grace and class. He's not the kind of guy leaning on a door and look like a fool for some. And I'm going to be honest, she's a good looking woman. She ain't smoking hot. She's not somebody you look at and go, oh my gosh, she's so photogenic, like Shelley Johnson is, where you just go, what a natural beauty. Oh my God, a stunner, where you can appreciate it, but find yourself going, wow, I can't stop looking at it. This woman is decent looking, might need to eat a sandwich, but not totally skinny, not, like some models might have been or whatever like that. She's a younger woman too. These guys are all good 5 to 10 years older than her. So even though a man's going to like a younger woman by this time here, no, and again, it just mirrors what's going on with James and his femme fatale. Here, we almost technically have another one that's right in front of our faces. So this is Twin Peaks doing that, where we're going to have kind of the same idea, but we're going to present it in 2 different storylines with maybe some different characters, and it's going to follow suit. Because you're right, they are all leaning towards her. Andy's got the big thing of milk, and he's swooning at her. It's so out of character for all of them, and I'm looking at her going, yeah, she's got a nice black dress on. It's not hookerish, and it's not, dragging behind her like an old maid. It's, I'm going out or whatever and partying kind of dress or whatever. And even though it's all black, and she's telling some dumb story and we're all laughing. So again, we don't know her. Nothing was built up with the older brothers or her. So what do we care about this? If maybe we liked the 2 brothers because of some additional time or backstory or something like that, and we heard a little bit about her, maybe she would have just made a look at somebody else in an earlier episode where we go, oh, she's got a little bit of a wandering eye, that bitch. And, only a trained eye as an adult watching this might catch it. And you go, well, I don't understand why some people might question it, but it doesn't make sense and it doesn't fit.
If we were introduced to the brothers, maybe towards the beginning of this season, and they were engaged to be married, and we saw exactly what you just said. Yeah. We saw that maybe from time to time some men would just swoon over her, setting it up for once the person I'm with is gone, they're all coming at me like flies to honey. And it's just but now we're just thrown into a situation that really doesn't make sense.
It's just gimmicky, and they all kind of want it to, you really shit on your audience when you just try to not at least carry on in spirit some of what's going on. I understand the need to try to do some different things and all that, but it's a fail. And if you're gonna, comedy's not always that easy to do when you've got something like this going on, and it's a hard task. The studio says, hey, yeah, you've got to get rid of you can't continue with your idea of not showing you who the killer is. You got to let it know. The audience is going to want to know. We're going to make you do it. It pissed Lynch off so much, he left. He's not even involved at this point. So even though Mark Frost, who's the other half of this, and did the Hill Street Blues writing and all that, knows how to kind of keep an episode moving from whatever to whatever, you've got a big group of writers in here, maybe 5 to 6 of them or whatever, writing the majority of these episodes. And so you've started things that you have a difficult time writing yourself out of, unless you really easily kill off a character or whatever. And it's just not working at all here. It's so bad. What is good, however, though, is, like I say, we're getting close to the end of this episode here, is this next little scene here too, is that you see Ernie, who's Norma's stepfather, because her mom had come in, and we guessed correctly that her mom was the food critic, which was a nice little angle and introduced a character. It was a good way to do it. I don't understand why Ernie's staying back and hasn't moved on yet, because it's been several days. I'm still scratching my head at that one, but he's sitting there eating like a pig. And Denise Duchovny shows up, and this is the only time this episode they try to do anything other than the Hank shot, where he saw Big Ed Norma, holding the hands for a brief moment or whatever. We see a shot of the floor of the diner, and we see this pair of legs in black shoes come up, and it's a slow pan up with the business suit jacket or whatever, and these legs walk over with some whimsical music, and it's Denise Duchovny sitting down. And it's like, okay, that was kind of funny, because that's kind of goes with the character and all that. But of course, flashing the DEA badge, basically saying, hey, here's the photos. And these are the photos that Audrey conveniently provided, and basically strong arms him too. Duchovny has a tough time, I think, with applying the lipstick in the scene here. He looks a little masculine doing it rather than feminine, but he's not being swishy. But again, he doesn't overdo it, but it's done well and it kind of goes. But you get this really kind of stupid, dumb, bizarre edit, which is supposed to be a continuation of it, where you have the storm going in the background, and you've got him basically saying, I'm guilty against my will. I was tortured. They threatened to kill my family. They blah, blah, blah. Like, wait a minute. You kind of had this goofy scene where, of course, they're going to want to squeeze him and use him. I get it. But it just, again, it's supposed to be a continuation of the scene, even though they cut to, I think it's Cooper's room they're in. I'm like going, I'm not buying it. I get Cooper's trying to push him or whatever, but yeah, just...
I think this is one of those scenes that could have used the cut, because some kind of transition, maybe put the starting scene before the sheriff stuff and the sheriff at the station with the widow. Mm-hmm. And then you go to Cooper's room, and that's where he starts giving information. I think it could have used that breather, because otherwise it just felt glued together. And it turns out, oh no, the piece is on backwards. Oh, what are you going to do now? But yeah, I do agree that Denise is one of the best parts of this very hard to get through episode. But we have to leave her, sadly. Why? Because we have to go to the marshes again. They're screaming, and James ends up, being up. So he goes to the window, and he's looking, and he can make out the figures in the distance. And there's some screaming. And that's when the brother comes in, drinking, and says that one day I'll kill him. And James, we see him staring off. He's not happy.
He's pensive. This troubled youth.
Yep, it is exactly that. And I wish I cared more.
Yeah, it's not much to really add here. I'll just simply say that obviously TV is a visual medium, and it's, you can have really good writing on TV. Film's, a better visual medium, in my opinion. So it's not even really about how great the acting is or whatever. A lot of it's just, if you're a good story can make up for a lot of flaws, as it were, and it's not happening right now. And to me, when you have, like you say, these choppy edits and stuff, I don't understand what kind of tone they're going for, because obviously it's kind of like a wink and a nod at some of these things where they're trying to be really cute, and it just doesn't work, because if she's the femme fatale and they haven't sealed the deal, obviously they will here soon. This could be done better. Of course, there's a storm out, and there's lots of lightning flashing, so I guess it's supposed to be spooky, but yeah, I don't kind of care. But
I know exactly what they're going for. I know exactly
I do too, but
what they're going for. And it's just like
not working.
No. And maybe if they could make some breathing room in there, it could work.
Yeah.
But it's just ridiculous, honestly. But there is one last good scene.
Yes, go for it.
Bobby comes home. This is the first time we've seen Bobby home in so many episodes.
Yep.
But we see his mom just sitting there in the dark. And he's like, what are you doing? Why are you here? And she's crying, and she's going on about how she's not so sure that her husband, Major Briggs, is going to come home. She can't be sure this time because it just doesn't feel right. Bobby says that he'll be fine. He's always fine. And he brings up that great talk that he and his dad had in the diner so many episodes ago that we were very happy with. We really felt what they were going for. And as he's explaining it, the lights suddenly shut off. And the Major comes home. He asks how long he's been gone, and he's saying it doesn't feel like it's been 2 days. And he asks his son for a strong cocktail. And that's when his wife has her arms around him and asks if everything's okay. Is everything all right? And Major Briggs says the answer's no. Not exactly. Not exactly. And that's where the episode ends.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a slightly different take on it. I do think this is by far the best scene, and it all has to do with Bobby because it references a fantastic scene earlier, and it's legitimate. We haven't seen Major Briggs' wife in a while. She's not a main character, even a side character at all. It's like, oh, who's this? And we see Bobby coming. Oh, okay. So then we kind of can assume that it's his mom. I like troubled Bobby, for lack of a better term. I don't like scheming Bobby with Shelley. I just, it's not working. But here, he talks about, Major Briggs's big kind of speech. And Major Briggs gave that speech. I think they were in the Double R diner when he was with Bobby. And he basically, he's telling him that he loves him and that he just sees, really wonderful things. And he does it in that really weird sort of Major Briggs Army, military sort of way where it's so different than how normal people talk, but you can sense that somebody in the military may talk like that. The guy just did a great job. We've had a few, like I said, great scene stealers by some people that just give a certain kind of peculiar speech or whatever too. And I like the fact that he's, old school father. I come home, I'm not going to show emotion. I'm going to tell you how it is. And that's it. I'm not going to yell or raise my voice, but you're not, Bobby lit a cigarette up there when he was talking to his mom, which, most of the time he's talking to his mom, you don't even see the cigarette in his hand. It's just edited really poor, but it's only there because when the Major reappears in a bursting flashlight and says, how long have I been gone? And I think she says 2 days. And he's like, it seemed like it wasn't that long. We know something weird's going on. And he, makes Bobby put out the cigarette and make me a strong cocktail more than I prefer, whatever. It's kind of stupid, but it's his speak. And he's sitting there loving on his wife and they're hugging. And we knew that his wife, despite how little we've seen her, we don't know whether we like her or not, that when she was asked about his disappearance, I think it was Cooper several episodes ago, she alluded to how this has happened before, like occasionally a couple times or something, and he always seems to show up. So, obviously it's a traumatic thing between a couple that seems very close. And Major Briggs he's not a major just because he's, sat on his ass for 30 years pushing papers. The dude's a stud. He knows stuff. And the last we saw him with Cooper, they are having this really great speech in the woods about stuff. So it looks like it's going to head back towards the woods at some point. But when the Major reappears, it's in a flashlight. He doesn't walk into the house. He just appears there in the house. They don't seem to even respond to that. Holy shit, he just showed up, and it looks like he's not wearing the same outfit he had before. It looks like he's wearing, I'm guessing, a World War I type outfit, and it's a sweet, it's not the creamy buttery leather jacket that at Big Ed wears, because that thing is just, it's smoking great looking piece, and it's not the really nice jacket that Truman has, whatever, but it just is this worn looking thing, and he's got the high leather boots and everything else there too. It's like, yeah, you were somewhere else because you've got a different outfit on. And that's how it ends with the storm and lightning going off. So again, you have a scene that, he's emotional with Bobby. And when Bobby's troubled and he's using a soft-spoken thing and lashing out because he's angry, that's great. When he's a schemer, it doesn't work. The mom was good enough for what she needed to do. And Major Briggs was, happy to be home without overdoing it. And it just was a very effective scene. But even here, the editing was kind of choppy. They overdid the lightning flashing because, again, the music and everything else didn't really seem to work at all in this episode. And I hate to say it because the music was phenomenal in season one, drawing you in a lot of stuff. I think it's been a little hit or miss in this season. So to me, like I say, I suffered through it. I ranted a lot. It's the worst episode of all by far to me. I know we talked about the one episode being jarring a few episodes ago where they were doing a kind of like a course correction. But overall, my final thoughts for this episode be is it's tough getting through it. Having seen season 2, even though it's been 30 years, I will say and reiterate to you, even though you don't know how it's gone because you haven't seen it, it does end strong because David Lynch does come back for the final few episodes. So I just hang in there because I honestly do not remember, for the most part, what comes next except for one or two small things. So I don't know if that's it, if there's going to be a big thing, but it's amazing how far we've come in 8 to 10 episodes in the time it took us to really fall in love with Twin Peaks from the season 1. In about an 8 episode span here in season 2, we've come to have what it feels like to me as a watcher, a completely different show. And this is where the ratings were, down in the barrel. Yeah. I mean, and it's amazing how far your star can fall and how quickly sometimes there too. So obviously we're not going to stop watching it. We're going to continue. Yeah, but tough episode. Sometimes you got to eat one, and that's what we did here with this one.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. But it is small things like that scene at the end and Denise's interaction with Cooper, what they're going for. There are small things that make you want to continue. These truly aren't like the episodes that we've had before. And it's really hard to get through most of it. But at least they still have the small things that make us want to give it its due, follow it through. And I'm just hoping for that strong finish.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of things going on. They're not lacking for storylines. So I will overall, even though they knew they had to go in this direction and didn't really have a lot of time to do it, I'm not going to say it worked or it's effective, but it's I'd rather have almost a little too much going on because maybe you can find something going on, and I just want to be consistent with it. So it's just kind of a tough place right now. So we'll see what happens here, but the detective stuff and the kooky stuff so far has been the best during this transition phase here. But yeah, we'll talk about it next week as we continue here on Xtreme TV reviewing season 2 of Twin Peaks, which will then be season 2, episode 13. So Pixel, I'd like to thank you for showing up tonight. For everybody listening, a lot of people seem to tune into the show. There's definitely a lot of passionate fans about Twin Peaks with their own philosophies and things about it. Oh, the only thing I was going to say too is I noticed with the Bobby scene, I wrote down they have a big white ceramic owl as the base for the lamp that lights up the room that the mom's sitting by. So it's sort of the only nature thing I think that we saw besides the storm going on in the background, even though they didn't show a clip of it, is, hey, we have another owl theme showing up. We just don't see the owls that like Cooper seems when he's out there in the woods. So I don't know if it means anything, probably not, but it's probably just a gimmick and that's it. So I'm now reduced to looking at furniture instead of jackets or other things because the writing is so bad. All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for making Twin Peaks one of our more successful shows here on the Xtreme Movie Show, where we cover anything from the 80s action films and all types of films from the 80s because we're 80s based. We dabble a little bit in television and everything else there too. So check us out. We have other things that are going on. We have Cold Check the Night Stalker that we're doing. Later this week, we'll be reviewing Ragnarok Season 2. Overall, we just did Season 1. Hint, spoiler, very good. Go watch it. It's the right way to do things, to treat things seriously, which Twin Peaks needs to take a lesson from. Thanks for listening. As always, stay extreme. Good night.